Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:05 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up in the next hour, we'll be joined by Michael Ding. He's an attorney from America First Legal, and we'll talk about the role that the Biden-Harris administration appears to have played in the arrest of a free speech platform's founder, Pavel Durov, arrested overseas. How is the American government involved in cracking down on that free speech? We'll discuss. You can talk to us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Back in 2019, it wasn't that long ago, Kamala Harris said, oh, fracking? Yeah, definitely getting rid of that.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
No question at all. But all of a sudden, now that she's been thrust into this presidential race over the last few weeks, she's changing all of her positions to include that one. She said last night on CNN that, oh, no, ban fracking? Who, me?
And in 2019, you said, quote, there is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, in a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What the frack is going on here? Let's ask Thomas Catenacci about that. He'll give us some details. He's from the Washington Free Beacon. Thomas, good to talk to you as always, sir.
Yes, great to be here.
All right, so 2019, she's like, yeah, I'm for banning fracking. In 2020, she popped up in a vice presidential debate, and she said, well, Joe Biden's not for banning fracking. That's what she's referencing there. And now she says, oh, no, I'm not for banning fracking at all. Is there any consistency here that you can point to?
Absolutely not. The only consistency really is just flip-flopping and trying to find how she can win an election, which, ironically, she doesn't do a very good job of doing, historically speaking. But, you know, I just want to kind of underscore the point. There is no doubt in my mind that she supports banning fracking. And you just follow her entire career. As you mentioned those comments, you know, she also did work trying to restrict fracking, ultimately try to ban it in California when she was Attorney General, even going after the Obama administration. And then she you know, states last night that somehow she supports oil and gas leasing, or what she called fracking leasing. It's like the stats show the complete opposite, Vince. And, you know, we can talk about data, but the bottom line is the Biden-Harris administration has leased the lowest amount of acreage of public lands compared to any administration stretching back decades. That's both Democrat and Republican. And so they tried to put forward a leasing moratorium. They failed, and instead they decided to just not follow the law and sort of indirectly pursue that moratorium.
So you know, she was a backer, a co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. She's been, you know, every step of the way when you get the radical left's kind of climate lobby, their green energy lobby. She's been supportive of all those efforts, and that includes banning fracking, right?
Absolutely. The Green New Deal, she was one of the original co-sponsors on. And the Green New Deal, of course, is, according to some of the more modest projections, a $70 trillion bill that would include things like banning fracking, banning all new oil and gas leasing, and putting forward mandates like electric vehicle mandates that consist of these very abrupt electrification mandates for the American people. And I think that, you know, what they're really doing here is trying to hide her own views from the public in this final few months before the election. And it just strikes me as very dishonest. I think if the average American and the average voter in Pennsylvania, of course, heard what she actually believes, and the campaign knows this, then there's no doubt that they would vote the other way. Because it's not just, you know, liberal as we would say, but it's very, very far left, progressive, and radical even, which she truly believes.
So there's also one of the practical realities of politics, unfortunately, is the corruption of it. When Kamala Harris took over for Joe Biden as the nominee, Semaphore ran a story saying dropping out may be the best thing Biden ever did on climate. And then they said U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris's move to the top of the Democratic presidential ticket is driving a surge in fundraising from climate-focused voters who were less eager to open their wallets for President Joe Biden. Then they tick down the list, and they're talking about all the leading, quote, green groups and all of the big ticket donors who are now pouring money into her coffers. They're not doing this because she's going to work against them, are they?
No, absolutely not. And you know for sure, and I've reported a little bit on this issue too. I've done a few stories about sort of these conversations that are happening behind the scenes with green groups, and I got a hold of a fundraising call that was private among some of the big groups like League of Conservation Voters and some activists like Bill McKibben. And they're all essentially what they're saying is she is going to be the most green president we'll be able to have at this point in history. And we're just going to support her as she sort of pretends and does this sort of dance with the media of,
yes,
you know, I no longer support this and I voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. We're getting it done. It's this whole sort of weird dance when they know in reality she'll come in there and on day one you will start seeing electric vehicle mandates. You will start seeing some of the harshest restrictions on oil and gas leasing, things that will really impact people and their wallets and
yep.
the gas pump.
In fact, there's another piece here, Politico. They say, quote, we don't want to sabotage her. Why green groups are going easy on Harris. In other words, they're keeping their powder dry right now because they know she just has to do this song and dance in order to get in. And then, boom, they're going to move, as you point out.
Yeah, and they're not just, endorsing her. They really are, and you mentioned this earlier, putting their money behind her. Tens of millions of dollars in ad campaigns, some of these the most powerful green groups, League of Conservation Voters, Climate Power, dark money groups like those. So they're really putting, and it really underscores that point. They wouldn't be doing this so aggressively, spending more money than they ever have if they didn't believe she would pursue these policies. So
let me just go back to the fracking for a moment. Let's pretend that this was a serious policy dispute. My understanding of fracking, if you're a believer of the left's climate orthodoxy, if you're all in on man-made climate change and we've got to stop it, all of this, the reality is that fracking has been the single biggest limiter of CO2 emissions that we've ever had. Fracking is responsible for massive drop-offs of carbon emissions, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, Vince, you read my mind. I was hoping you would ask that question because, this is a popular tangent of mine. Over the last 15 years, I have the stats right in front of me. The U.S. has reduced carbon emissions more than any other country in the world, and has reduced emissions by 879 million metric tons. That's a 14% decrease. And it's exactly why you just said, or how you just described it, which is because of fracking, because of more reliance on natural gas for power generation across the nation, we're reducing emissions. And so you would think, right, that climate activists would be very happy about this, say more fracking, more natural gas production. Like let's kind of find the middle ground here where we can all rally together for lower prices. But instead, it's actually the opposite. They're very upset that they see here that fossil fuels and continued fossil fuel production can lead to these sorts of emissions reductions that they never would have thought was possible, just 15 years ago. And so it kind of gets to that sneaky thing where what do they really want here?
Yes.
Is it lower emissions, or is it sort of control? Is it mandates, top-down government power? And so that's kind of where my reporting leads me. Is I find that conversation very interesting.
Right.
They're getting the results. Why aren't they happy?
Because that's not actually the end goal, as you're wisely pointing out. The end goal isn't a decrease in carbon emissions or anything like that. If it was, they would be aggressively promoting nuclear energy. They're not doing that. And so the reason is the typical sort of corruption. They sell you the scare tactic. They say the only answer is to concentrate more power in Washington and to give money to the organizations that are associated with this movement. That's it. And it's fundamentally just a corrupt industry that doesn't actually have any true idealistic or noble goals.
Yeah, and I just want to throw out a few more data points for you and for your audience that I think are really important. The Department of Energy in 2021 put out a report about a fracking ban, and they found that it would lead to a 244% increase in natural gas prices, kill 7.7 million jobs, and reduce the U.S. GDP by 1.1 trillion. I mean, those are just insane numbers.
Well, if we banned fracking, where would we get energy from if we banned fracking?
Yeah, just pixie dust and magic, I guess.
But assuming we turn to traditional, assuming we turn to traditional means, burning coal or something, they're going to lift carbon emissions. Banning fracking would increase carbon emissions.
Yeah, absolutely, and it would increase prices as well. And there's often been a theory, and I think that there's quite a bit of evidence supporting it, that the left really wants prices from traditional power to go up, such as coal. And then they can really push the narrative that green energy will save everything. But it's very hard to do that, Vince, when emissions are going down, prices are low with fossil fuel production. How are they ever going to convince the average American to, support the sort of policies that they want and the policies that will lead to tons of money flowing to their friends in the green energy movement?
Yeah. It's if you don't have your eyes open to this scam by now, I don't know what it's going to take. But Kamala Harris right now trying to pretend like she's Madam American Energy. She's not. She's working against it. And look no further than the billions, the donors who are just pouring in right now to get her across the finish line in a very short window. Thomas Catenacci is with the Washington Free Beacon. He's been a great reporter on this issue for years. Tom Cat, great to talk to you as always, sir.
Great to talk to you as well. Have a great weekend, Vince.
You too. All right, let me see. I've got some calls pouring in as well. Willie in Culpeper's on line 2. Willie, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, you have a great show as usual. Listen, I'm a CO2 proponent. How about that? CO2 makes things grow. You take all the CO2 out of the atmosphere, you'll kill the planet. There are many times in the Earth's past history when the CO2 levels were much, much higher than they are now.
Sure.
And things got along just fine.
You know how much Willie's a proponent of CO2? You know how much? I can tell you're a proponent, Willie, because you're making it right now as we speak. On the phone, you're making CO2, and I respect that.
Oh, thank you very much. Day one, the Harris-Biden administration, that's what she called it on occasion, or he did, said they made war on energy. And they're still making war on energy, and we're paying the price for it.
Yeah, and I love this stunt that they pull from time to time. You're like, hey, what's the deal? You guys are attacking energy. They're like, no, we're not. Record oil production. Yeah, you can thank Trump for that. These leases, the way this works is once they try and fire up these oil wells, it takes 5 years. It takes 5 years to actually get them up and running, which means if you're dating this back 5 years, if you're looking at this oil production now, who was president of the United States when those oil wells were getting going?
Donald Trump.
Donald J. Trump. That's exactly right. All right, Will, you keep on making CO2, man. I really appreciate the call today. Nice to talk to you. When I have these conversations about American energy, sometimes we get a phone call from a guy called Don in Alexandria. Oh, there he is. Don in Alexandria, line 4. Hello, Don. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Hey, just wanted to kind of augment the discussion with Mr. Catenacci.
Yeah.
The reason that we get a reduction with fracking and natural gas is because natural gas, since that late 2008 or so time frame, has replaced so much of the coal we used to burn.
Yeah.
And the CO2 emissions for a unit of energy of natural gas is about half of what the same unit of energy for coal. So when you replace natural gas, replace coal with natural gas, huge emission reductions, and that's what people have to understand, why we need fracking. 40% of our electricity comes from natural gas right now. If we were to ban fracking, again, the reason why it increased so much, within months or certainly a few years, we would be in a world of hurt. We'd either have to go back to coal or, like you guys mentioned, nuclear, which I would love to see I would love to see, but I doubt it's going to happen anytime quickly. So fracking we've got to continue fracking, or we lose the society that we currently know.
Well, exactly right. It's cheap, it's abundant, it's efficient, and it's the kind of thing that we should be taking advantage of, not destroying. And Kamala Harris just in 2019, she straight up said she would ban it. In your view, Don, how radical is that idea that an American politician would say, you know what, that industry that's providing so many benefits to the American people, I'm going to kneecap it. I'm going to get rid of it entirely.
Yeah, it would just destroy society as we know it, because we know that wind and solar, look at today, Vince. My goodness, it's cloudy and not a breeze. We would be in a world of hurt if we didn't have 40% of our electricity.
Oh, definitely. There's no question about it. Don, thank you. And Don, remind me, your line of work, is it energy, or you just study this well?
I follow energy very closely. It's my day job is not directly energy.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Don, as always. I really appreciate your calls because they're always so wise. That's Don in Alexandria. So Don pointing out that this cheap, abundant American energy is really good for us, and we shouldn't destroy it. Kamala come lately is now saying, we shouldn't destroy it. We should keep it. But it's only because she is trying to squeak past the finish line in Pennsylvania. That's all this is. It's a stunt to try and win a battleground state before she takes the knife to their throat. She's not going to be loyal to them beyond Election Day. She just needs them for Election Day. That's the plan. Right now, it looks like, though, in Pennsylvania specifically, the Keystone State, that it is a neck-and-neck race. There have been some good surveys this week showing Trump doing well there. And that's a great sign coming out of the Democrat convention, because they always say there's that convention bounce. So they get the convention bounce. Well, it appears it's non-existent for Kamala Harris, that convention bounce. Yeah. Well, we're barreling towards Election Day. President Trump had some announcements yesterday about some policy changes as it relates to the issue of life and families. Let's get into them coming up. I want to kind of run down the list. It's causing some consternation on the right. Let's see if we can untangle it. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, we'll be joined by Michael Ding. He's an attorney at America First Legal. We'll talk about the threats to free speech worldwide, the role that the Biden-Harris administration has been playing in that, and the arrest of Telegram founder Pavel Durov. How have Biden and Harris been involved in that? We'll explore that as well. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump did a visit to Michigan yesterday, Potterville, Michigan, and had an energetic rally there, as usual. And during that rally, there were a couple of things. For one, he did a little bit of stand-up, which was pretty funny. It's just typical sort of Trump mocking Joe Biden, and rightfully so. Joe Biden definitely deserves it, especially because Biden's not doing anything. You see all these images of Biden sitting on a beach chair staring at the water, not being president of the United States this week. Here's President Trump commenting on that.
Well, do we have a president? He just got back from California. He was supposed to go to the White House. He never got there. He went to Delaware, and he's laying on a beach sleeping all day long. No, seriously, who the hell wants to sleep? And who wants to sleep in public? He's sleeping. Do you think President Xi of China is at a beach sleeping? Do you think Kim Jong-un is sleeping from North Korea with his nuclear weapons all over the place? They don't sleep so much. No, we have a guy sleeping. And she's incompetent.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. That's a pithy way to describe Kamala Harris. So there's President Trump mentioning yesterday that Biden is literally asleep at the switch. The guy is sleeping on the beach, not doing anything. And of course, what you need is, somebody has to have a hand on the wheel. Who is it? We have no idea. They don't tell us. Just shadowy forces. Don't you worry. The people around Biden and Harris are running the country. Oh, that gives me comfort. The people who crow about democracy, the idea that the people should have a say, are the people aware of who's actually running the show? What kind of republic is this? Also at that rally, the president brought up a guy who represents Auto Workers for Trump. He's an organizer of Auto Workers for Trump. His name's Brian Panebecker. And he was obviously very enthusiastically pro-Trump, and he was encouraging other auto workers to join him.
I represent the Auto Workers for Trump organization, which was a Facebook group. I started that group. Thank you. There's some auto workers here, I'm sure. Lansing got a lot of them. But unfortunately, a lot of them have lost their jobs. Listen, Chrysler and General Motors have already gone bankrupt once. But if we allow electric vehicle mandates to be put on this industry by the federal government, they're going out of business again. We got to fight against that. And this guy standing right here is the only person who will do it. We cannot allow the federal government to put mandates on the auto industry to build electric vehicles when the consumers do not want them. So I'm asking everybody, I'm asking auto workers, and I'm asking everybody that supplies the auto industry, get 10 or 15 of your friends, make sure they get out and vote. Our very survival depends on it, and we can't allow it to happen. So vote Trump and J.D. Vance, and we'll turn this country around. He's done it once. Unfortunately, he's going to have to go back and do it again. Thank you.
Yeah, no question. He's raising an obvious point, which is the government's choice, the artificial destruction of American success. Why would you do that? Well, of course, to enrich your cronies and to assume power unto yourself. But the destruction of the American auto industry, the destruction of those auto jobs, forcing them to build electric vehicles rather than internal combustion engines, trying to distort the market's desires. This is the exact kind of corruption that people hate. They hate it, and they see the suffering in their country as a result of it. And so a great message there. Donna's calling in from Frederick on line 2. Now, Donna, good afternoon. You are on the Vince Catenacci Show.
Hi, good afternoon. Happy Friday. I would recommend that when people get home, get on RSBN or wherever you want to watch, and enjoy the rally. And I say that because I actually tuned in to just kind of listen to who was speaking. And I heard Alina Habba, who is fantastic, Byron Donalds, who is fantastic. And I'm thinking to myself, we often forget because we're so tied up in all the minutia that we're subject to on a daily basis coming in from the left, how powerful and how many patriots we actually have with us and with Trump. And we can't lose sight of that. And we have to hold our heads high and put on the armor of God every day and just stay focused and get out and vote, because it really will matter. Our republic's at stake. I think most of us know that by now, but we still have to wake up the rest. So,
anyway, that's true. That's true. The
Yeah.
threat of a Harris presidency is very profound. It's not a good thing. We've seen enough, haven't we? But to your point, I'm mentioning as I came into this segment the Michigan rally yesterday, and I need to spend more time on that because I want to talk about the issue of life and what pro-lifers should think about President Trump's remarks yesterday, because there's some meaningful stuff to dig into there. But as you point out, Congressman Byron Donalds of Florida speaking actually at this moment in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And for instance, he went after Kamala Harris just a second ago on this.
She said it herself. Her values haven't changed. They are the same values that will take away your purchasing power. They are the same values that will shut down fracking in Western Pennsylvania. They are the same values that leave our southern border wide open. They are the same values that have our adversaries emboldened. And there is only one person who can stop her and save America, and that man is Donald J. Trump.
All right, there you go. So Congressman Byron Donalds, who is a very talented surrogate for President Trump, out there in Pennsylvania today, Donna, as you point out, making the case.
Yeah, it's refreshing. And we have to remember that really, we have more in our favor than against us.
Yeah.
The left media complex, they want us to think they're still in control. They're obviously not, and they're going to do what they can to censor. And, they're going to create roadblocks. We know that. So we just all need to be prepared and stay strong.
No question. All right, thank you, Donna, as always. Excellent call. So Donna bringing up what's going on with these rallies. Back to that rally yesterday in Michigan, President Trump raised a new policy concept yesterday involving in vitro fertilization. He announced, well, in fact, I'll just let him make the announcement. Here he is on audio. I want you to hear this, and then we'll talk about it. Take a listen.
I'm announcing today in a major statement that under the Trump administration, your government will pay for, or your insurance company will be mandated to pay for, all costs associated with IVF treatment, fertilization for women, IVF treatment. Because we want more babies, to put it very nicely. And for this same reason, we will also allow new parents to deduct major newborn expenses from their taxes, so that parents that have a beautiful baby will be able. So we're pro-family. Nobody's ever said that before. But the IVF treatments are expensive. It's very hard for many people to do it and to get it. But I've been in favor of IVF right from the beginning.
All right, so what's happened as a result of that, and there was another statement he gave to NBC about Florida's 6-week abortion limit. That's the heartbeat law in Florida. There's a big amendment on their ballot this November, and the press is asking him all about it. Are you going to vote for it? Are you going to vote for against it? In other words, are you going to remove that heartbeat law in Florida? We'll get to that. But on IVF in particular, so the president announces two things effectively, or maybe three, is that the government's going to pay for IVF treatments, that he will potentially mandate the insurance companies across the country to cover those IVF treatments, and finally that there will be deductions for newborn expenses. Now that last element, that's the one I'm celebrating. I love that. First of all, cut taxes wherever you can, but especially if you're encouraging family development in that way, that's fantastic. Make deductions for the types of expenses you have for newborns is great. And as anybody who's ever had a newborn knows, this is a very expensive time in your life. You're buying a lot of stuff in order to figure out how to keep that human alive. And to the extent that the tax man can stay out of your way, wonderful. In vitro fertilization, though, is now he's stepping into a pretty controversial area for a lot of his base. Now, his base supports family development, no question. Having children, wonderful. But the reason IVF is controversial at all is because of all of the lives that are generated that are then subsequently destroyed. IVF involves fertilizing a number of eggs and then implanting them and then sorting for which one is going to take and survive. And the rest, in the end, are destroyed, typically. There are variations on this, sometimes called ethical IVF, where they will fertilize a single egg and then implant them one at a time in an effort to see which one holds. But the basic procedure, so long as we're calling it a medical procedure, involves the destruction of a lot of lives. In fact, studies on this have found that IVF results in millions of discarded lives every year. In fact, more human embryos are destroyed through IVF than abortion each year. So you can see than traditional understandings of abortion or what we call an abortion procedure. So you can see why this is considered controversial among his base. And it's led to some pro-life people I've seen online saying, well, I can't vote for him under these circumstances. I can't vote for him. I won't support him. Look, if you arrive at that position now, I think you've gone too far, too rapidly. I'm vehemently pro-life. I think we should cherish every single soul and fight for them in every possible way. Here's what I know about Kamala Harris. She represents the party of death. Whatever quibble you may have with President Trump on this issue, and you are entitled to as a voter, you are absolutely entitled, and you should make your voice heard on the subject to try and influence his judgments. Kamala Harris leads a party that is completely in favor of discarding human life all the way up until birth and even beyond, in the case of people like Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, former Virginia governor. Crystal clear. And by the way, President Trump, to his credit, brings this up all the time. That they're for radical positions on abortion, getting rid of these kids, including after birth. And then you'll see fact checkers come flying in. Nobody's for killing kids after birth. That would be homicide. Well, then take it up with your guy. Take it up with Ralph Northam and anybody on the left who sounds like him, who would allow a baby to die on a table after they're born. That was Ralph Northam's position. Take it up with him, Mr. Fact Checker. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have sought to, and successfully have, jailed and imprisoned pro-life activists for praying in front of abortion mills. That's their position on this subject. And in the case of Kamala Harris, while she was the lead prosecutor in California, she was attacking journalists for exposing the horrors of Planned Parenthood and what they were doing with discarded baby bodies, selling them off. That's the Kamala Harris approach to this issue. So they are completely vile on the subject. Now, President Trump hasn't made a secret of it. I mean, through the years, this is an issue that is not at the top of his list. There are clearly political considerations that are animating his announcement, obviously, where he says something like, because what he's trying to do is really take the weapon out of the hands of the left. To the extent that if you look down the issues, right, the issues that voters care about, Donald Trump has all the advantages. The economy, Trump. The border, Trump. Foreign policy, Trump. Just keep going down the list, and it's all Trump, 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 except for the issue of abortion. And I don't mind it. If I'm in the minority on this issue, I don't mind that at all. That's fine. But I, like so many other people who are pro-life, sincerely believe that a life is at stake. So, as a result, that's how I arrive at my views on the subject. But Trump looks at the data and he goes, okay, abortion, well, that's the one area. And this is why Kamala's running on it. She's an abortion enthusiast. She's running on the issue. In fact, I think next week she's going to be campaigning a bit on this. That's the one area. It activates a voting bloc where President Trump is trying to take the teeth out of it as he heads into the election. It's a strategy. This attitude also extends to the way he's talking about that amendment in Florida. It's known as Amendment 4. It would get rid of the heartbeat protections. So once a heartbeat's found, it's actually 6 weeks. Once at 6 weeks of gestation, at the moment of the heartbeat, Florida has a law that says you can't kill these kids. It has exceptions. It has all of the exceptions that Trump seeks in his attitudes on these. Rape, incest, life of the mother. That's all in there already in Florida law. But for consideration right now, Florida residents are being asked, do you want to get rid of it? Will you sign on to this amendment to get rid of it? President Trump was asked about this by NBC yesterday. And here is how he answered. He didn't answer. I'll tell you what his campaign is saying in a moment. This is just his answer to the question. And he doesn't say yes or no about how he's going to vote.
You overturned, everyone does. I think Roe, does, yeah.
And you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years, 52 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states. Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
All right, so that's the answer. So when you hear that, you might be inclined to say, oh, he's voting for the amendment. In other words, to get rid of the protections for the unborn in Florida. But his campaign came out moments after this. Caroline Leavitt, who we've talked to here, and said the following, that President Trump, quote, has not yet said how he will vote on that ballot initiative in Florida. He simply reiterated that he believes 6 weeks is too short. In other words, what we're seeing happen here is he's keeping it vague. President Trump is attempting to keep it vague, and that's clearly guided by his desire to navigate through what he sees as a political minefield. This is an issue. This is the one issue, actually, where he feels like the left is trying to seize the advantage. He wants to disarm them on this subject, and hence we get answers like that yesterday. All right, more in a moment. I do want to tackle more of this because I think it's worthwhile, and so many of us I know care so sincerely about the issue of life, which is why it's worth addressing, including with the guy who you really like and you want to see win this election.
WMAL, making sense of mainstream media because the double standard is real. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Okay, now we have breaking news. President Trump is in Pennsylvania, but apparently ahead of going on stage, he spoke with a Fox News reporter who asked for clarity. Will you be voting for Florida's Amendment 4, which would make abortion legal for all the way up to birth in Florida, or will you be voting against it, preserving that 6-week limit with exceptions? Here is President Trump's answer, now much clearer than the one he gave NBC yesterday.
Voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida.
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation that where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, you know, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
There he is. So now he's saying, I'm voting no on Amendment 4 in Florida. Let me remind you what this says about him. This is a guy who, time and time again, will actually listen to the response that he gets from his base. There are people who support him so much who heard his answer yesterday and they said, please don't vote yes on this thing. You are enabling deep radicalism and a very destructive policy should this come to pass. And President Trump listens to that and made it really clear just now in that answer. He's voting no in Florida. That's going to give a lot of encouragement to especially the voters in Florida there who are with him. Thank goodness for that. All right, hold on. I've got Michael Ding joining us in just a moment from America First Legal. We'll talk to him about the threats to the First Amendment led by the global left.